Hello, veterinary friends. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I have a very special guest for you. Her name is Lauren Berlin, and she is a parent success catalyst, certified coach, board certified behavior analyst, and an educational psychologist with over 20 years of experience helping families thrive. Lauren is the go-to resource for parents seeking practical, science-backed strategies such as mindful parenting, effective communication, and stress management. And that's what all of us busy people and parents need. So welcome to the podcast, Lauren. I'm delighted to have you.
Yes, Julie, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I know a lot of my listeners are parents, either of young kids or older kids, and it kind of applies to us all, right? So I'm
It
excited to
does.
hear your story and get your expertise on how we handle all this.
Yes, well, I've I don't know that any of us are ever a full expert in managing all the stresses our kids can deliver. But I'll do
Yeah,
my
because they
best.
always think it's something new, right?
They do, just
There
when
were
you
so
think you've
many
got it
things that I
down.
went through with my kids that I was shocked. I was like, wait, I never knew I would have to do this.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I always ask everyone at the beginning of the podcast to tell me their story because I like to hear how people got to where they are today. So whatever you want to tell, as much or as little.
Sure. Gosh, so I think I what I would say is since I started working, I always worked in jobs with children. So I was a babysitter, I taught swim lessons, I worked at day camps. And in going through college, I thought, I want to have some kind of a job. I'm really interested in the fields of psychology. I really like working with kids. And so I ended up becoming a school and educational psychologist. And which, if folks don't know, school psychologists work in public school systems and do the assessments to help determine if students have disabilities, what are their learning styles, what kind of different approaches might different students need in order to really, access their education. And so, um, in doing that work, I also became really interested just because learning is one part of who kids are and how they learn, but also how they communicate and how they behave. And all those things kind of go together. And so I became really interested in supporting more effectively some of our students who really had a hard time with their behavior at school. Which is then when I became a board certified behavior analyst. I'm a really curious person. So it's like, gosh, I just need to know more about this. Let's get a certification.
Yeah, let's take some
um,
more classes. That's how a lot of us
exactly.
are too.
Yes. So I became a board certified behavior analyst and began doing some work in people's homes. So a lot of my clients, the students had autism, and the students were right behavior is communication, and so through their behavior, really trying to communicate their wants and needs. And so I worked with their parents, sometimes their siblings, grandparents, whoever was their support and structure system to help and build the students' skills and find more effective ways to communicate, sometimes more safe ways to communicate them through behavior. And so really started working with a lot of parents, really hands-on and like in their homes at that point in my career. I didn't become a parent myself until much later in my career. And along the way, I've worked in various public education systems. I'm in California. I actually served as an assistant principal of a high school of about 2,000 students for a number of years, and then became the principal of a small high school during the pandemic. And at that time, also had a 3-year-old and a newborn. So when you talk about stress and working parents and in big jobs, I really had all those
All of
things
it.
coming together
Yeah, so you
at
have
a
all
really
the
challenging
experience.
time. Yeah. And so I think that's just kind of the broad strokes of professionally sort of what my journey has been like, from working in public school systems to working in people's homes. And then most recently in the past 2 years, recognizing that I've learned a lot along the way as a mom, as a professional. And so in my newest chapter, I'm bringing those skills into a coaching practice where I really support a lot of parents who are in jobs where they're high performing, managing, their professional lives, their personal lives, and those two things are intertwined always. And
Yes.
so really helping people be able to not just sort of survive in both of those capacities, but find ways that they can, actually remember that there's joy and they love things about both their job and their families.
Enjoy their
Um,
life, because that's why
yes,
we get our career in the first place, right? Is because
yes,
we think we're going to enjoy it. That's why we have kids, because we think it's going to be awesome. And
yeah.
and it is, but it's also difficult, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So veterinarians are very high achieving people, and you coach people that are high achieving in
Hmm.
their parenting. And there's a lot of this feeling of being guilty as a mom,
Hmm.
going to work and leaving your kids in daycare or wherever, their care is, not being there enough for them. At least that's what sometimes we think.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that to us. Like, what is the mom guilt thing and how do we handle that?
Yeah. I want to speak to that. And I also want to speak to a different side of mom guilt, which is one that like resonates for me too. I was thrilled to leave my kids at daycare when they were babies. And I want to say
I
it.
hate to say that I sometimes felt that way too.
Um, I was so good at my job and I loved it. It was the place where I felt really competent. And I, on the other hand, did like while I worked with kids, I worked with high school kids. I wasn't
Right,
working with infants every day.
right, yeah,
I and my second in particular was really hard. He had reflux, he had all the things. He was that baby that couldn't be put down and was always crying. I couldn't wait to get back to work because it was a place that I loved my routines at work, the staff that I worked with, and I felt so competent there. I felt so incompetent at home.
yeah.
My guilt really looked different, and I just want to share this in case it resonates with any of
It
your other
absolutely
listeners who
will,
are
I'm
like,
sure.
actually, the pets are great, my kids are tough. Um, so
Yes.
what was really hard for me is in working a big job, where I was giving it my all end to end of the day. Um, I was showing up in a way at home, like I would get home and I'd be really overwhelmed, dysregulated. Like maybe I had back-to-back meetings all day or dealt with a really tough situation with a family. I'm sure that, your vet listeners can I'm sure you have some really emotionally challenging days in
Right.
that work. And then I would go home and have like just the littlest thing happen. Like the example I always remember is like the bathtub water just like splashing out on the floor and just feeling deep, deep rage
Like
for no good reason.
you couldn't stand one more second of bath
One
time.
more second.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, and then feeling really guilty about that. So, like I was gone all day and I knew they were in good hands and, getting so much love and care and attention at daycare. But then when I got home, I wasn't bringing the best version of myself because I was just, having such a hard
You were
time sort of
done.
coping with it all. I
Yeah.
was so done. And
Yeah.
so when I think of guilt, I think about it from both sides. I think about I personally didn't experience a lot of guilt, with the kids being in daycare. Like I knew that they were getting tummy time and social skills time. And I don't know if this resonates. I'm sure it has to resonate with at least a few of your listeners. Like I just can't with like glitter and like Play-Doh. Like I just can't.
My
Um,
girlfriend hates glitter. That cracks me up. She hates glitter.
and so they got to do that like at
Right.
daycare. And it was
Yeah. And make
awesome.
messes and
Yes, yes.
yes. Yeah.
We have these pictures. They're like some of our most treasured pictures from when the kids were little and they were at this daycare. And they are covered head to toe in paint. Like it's in their mouth, it's up and down their body. And they are having so much fun. And I would not have had fun doing that.
Right, right. Yeah, I think we forget that. It's like some of us, I've told my kids this. My kids are both adults now, but I said to them, I said, had I not worked and had I tried to be a stay-at-home mom with you two, I probably would have been the worst mom because I would have been deeply unhappy.
Mhm.
Not that I didn't love them and I wanted to be with them. I did. I spent a lot of time with them and I went out of my way to do so. But I think if had I taken veterinary medicine away from myself, because it was my
Mhm.
dream,
Yeah.
in order to be a stay-at-home mom, I would have been miserable. And as much as, you have that, well, maybe I should stay home with my kids guilt, you also have that, yeah, but I was a better person because
Mhm.
I had that career. And when I came home, I put more effort into being with my kids than I think I would have had I not worked.
Yeah, and and that's really similar for me, and I see that too with other high achievers that I've
Yeah,
worked with. It's how do I find the balance point so that when I am home, my kids get the best of me? And that
right,
was where I was feeling a lot of guilt, was because when I was home, my kids weren't getting the best of me.
right, right.
Even
Yeah,
though I knew I was doing the right, like I was happy being at work and I felt good about
right,
that decision, figuring out how I integrated those two things took me some time,
right, right,
and was quite a journey, right, to figure out, because all of a sudden you have someone else. I have two kids total, so you have someone to rely on you that like you didn't have to account for before, and it
right.
really is a big adjustment that I
Sure
think
is. Yeah.
all of a sudden they're there and they come home with you and they're yours forever.
And nobody tells you what to do with them.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
one
And
tells you how to make
and
those
how you make all
decisions.
those pieces fit, because your clients, again, for me, it was my students and their parents. For
Right.
yours,
Our people and our animals.
your
Yep,
people
it's
and
the
their pets,
same dynamic.
their world didn't change because
Right.
you had kids.
Exactly. Yeah. And their expectations don't change.
Right.
They don't
And so,
understand that,
mhm,
you might have to, a lot of the veterinarians that worked for me over the years, when they had babies, then they wanted to breastfeed and they had to pump their milk, and like it changes the schedule in the
mhm.
hospital. And, you have to allow for these different things, and clients don't want to hear that.
Right. And I think, as I was just reflecting and thinking about this conversation today, one of the things that I was really thoughtful about was not right away, but like after it felt like things got to a breaking point, was everyone around me, like, the staff in my office, my administrative team and people I work with, they see that it's not going well for me, right? Like
They
everyone
notice.
knows, everyone's sort of like waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Right.
And so I think, one of the biggest like leverage points that I can think of is in actually just having one of those really candid conversations and saying like, something has to give. Like, I know you guys see that this is going well.
Right. You can see
Can
that
we
I'm not
talk about
feeling
it?
right.
Like,
And you're
let's,
not the
right?
same.
Because I think a lot of times, especially, I think about the dynamics of like a school office or like your veterinary office, like you have your support teams, right? And so they see things kind of, they're maybe picking up pieces too. And so actually having that candid conversation and really saying like, can we talk about this? This isn't like, I know that this isn't going well. It doesn't feel good to me. Let's brainstorm, because also, your team might even have ideas about what could look different or how things could be scheduled or communicated in a way that you're making those like real time adjustments for things you didn't expect. Like it just takes 20 minutes to like, it's not just the pump time, it's like cleaning, storage,
Right.
like
Yeah.
reconfiguring
Yeah. You got to
yourself,
clean
your
the
space. Like,
machine and put the milk away. And like it's a whole process.
yeah.
Yeah.
And being scheduled to the second, right, doesn't allow for you to show up into your appointments the way you want to show up,
Back
right?
together. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what happened for you in that situation? Like your team noticed it. The
Mm.
people around you were like, okay, she used to be all put together and now she's a hot mess because she has two kids.
Yeah.
So then what,
Um,
like, how did you start to figure out that you needed a change?
um, I like really and truly, like I could feel it in my nervous system. Like it felt like an electrical current of just like where like anything could set me off at any time. So I don't think I had any one like aha moment.
Right. It was just this
It,
overall
it's
feeling
constant,
of
this
high
constant
anxiety.
like high anxiety. Actually, I'm gonna try to do it fast, but it's a great story.
Oh no, you
So,
don't have to do it fast. I have all the time in the world.
so, um, we had just relocated, so that was its own, challenge. Like two kids, so one at a new daycare, one in transition kindergarten. So they were, 2 and 5.
So,
I was in a new job. My partner was in a new job. We were in a new city. And sort of just adjusting to everything, all the new relationships, all the new people, and a new commute. And I was driving down the freeway and like, turn signal to turn right to exit. And something like rolled in my dashboard and like roll click. And then I made a left turn like at the next stop sign and it rolled and then clicked like, and so it's like something has like come loose in my dashboard.
yeah.
What has happened? So I didn't take my car, like who has time for that? I didn't take my car in. So
As long as it's still running, you just deal with it,
weeks,
right?
every time I turned, something would
You heard it.
roll and then hit the side of the dashboard. And it was a thing that like with that frazzled, fried, like nervous anxiety energy that I was just holding all the time.
Right.
That plus like the kids in the back seat, I would be driving and just like I could the it would hit the side and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I don't even know. It sounds like a marble. How did a marble get in my dashboard? Like, how could that have even happened?
Right. How could that be?
Weeks later, maybe months later, I don't know. Whenever I eventually take my car in, it was a marble. One of my kids had somehow put a marble like through an air conditioner vent or something, and it was rolling back and forth and smacking the little inside of the dashboard every time I was
Yeah.
driving. So that like that level of just like nervous, chaotic anxiety energy living in my system and that like the noise of that just
It was
like
just like a trigger.
yeah, and it
Like,
like where it would
what
I would
is going on?
physiologically just be like jumping and
Right.
reacting to that. And so like I really held it in my body and knew that and it
Something
felt
was wrong.
bad to feel that way. Like just I felt so off and I think,
Well,
you're
and
so
you,
out of sorts with your body after you're pregnant and you're not and like there's so
right.
many changes your body's going through anyway and and my kids were really young at that point still so it's like your body doesn't feel your own for so many reasons and then to just have this like energy that just I couldn't control felt really
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Yeah. To me, it just feels like any minute you're just going to lose it.
Yes, I
When
felt
I
like
get
that
that level
constantly.
of
Mm-hmm.
stress, it's kind of like, okay, one thing happens and I'm going to blow. I'm going to yell at
Yes.
somebody or I'm going to, scream at my kids or whatever. So yeah, I understand that
Yeah.
feeling. I've had it.
And for me too, working with students and families all day, I had to keep it together for
Sure
them.
you
Like
do.
that was my professional job, right?
Right, right,
Which just meant that at the end of the day, and like kind of back to that mom guilt piece, the people who were getting the worst of me were the people who should have gotten the best of me.
right, right. And it wasn't happening.
No.
So then well, I don't know if if this is where we want to go, but how did you start to solve it?
I mean, I did therapy and coaching for a
Okay.
long time.
Okay, which like
So it's like
that's
I was
my
out of
advice
tools.
to people, right?
Yeah.
When you're very unregulated, you do have to find outside help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's where I recognize too, like I'm a pretty well resourced and knowledgeable person. I have a master's degree in psychology. I
Right.
help other people
But you
with
can't help
their
yourself.
behavior. And I don't have any tools left for
Right.
myself.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I started with therapy. And then I added coaching in, and I really think the combination of both things for me was really helpful. I made a lot of progress in therapy, sort of working through like regulation exercises and things like that that I could do.
Right.
And then maintained coaching for a little while longer to really help me think about, where am I going now? Like, are there things about my work life that are working for me? Are there things I need to change? And like I said, we'd had one more factor was like we'd had a huge life transition and we'd like relocated to a new area.
Yeah, and
And
that's always
so,
hard.
yeah, so
If
really
you don't have your
adjusting
support
through.
system, your stores are different, your doctor's appointments are different, your people around you are different. Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
very hard.
so, really taking the time to kind of process what was happening and then sort of make a plan for what I wanted to do and changes and shifts that and to be honest, like there was no one huge change, but like a
Right.
lot of shifts that through those, and I would say this is where also then my analyst hat comes on, right? It's through the smallest but most consistent changes
Yes.
that ultimately the biggest shifts come.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think a lot of times we expect like a quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
And our clients do this to us all the time. They bring their pet in and they want you to just give it a pill and make it better. They don't want to do any work to kind of change things if their pet's overweight or, we're very adverse to like long-term solutions. We're more into
Mm-hmm.
like, let's have a quick fix. And I think that when you're trying to fix your emotions and your time management, emotional regulation, anything that has to do with you and feeling better, it takes time and it
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of steps. Like you said, you did therapy, you did coaching, I've done both, and it's just little steps to get you where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be fixed overnight.
Yeah, and I imagine this will resonate too. And I've, seen that in a lot of my clients and for myself that, you imagine, right? Like I want to be a parent. That's something that I like envisioned as a part of my journey. And I have this career that I've crafted and I've come to this place that I feel really good about. Um, and I imagine I'm going to be able to do both those things. There's a saying about like you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. And I think it's like, not sure if that's exactly it.
That, I
But
think that is
it might not look the way you thought. Or I guess I'm gonna double down. It's probably not gonna look the way you thought.
yeah,
And there's like it's inevitable that you get to this place. I think of like, wait, how did I get here? Like this isn't like, and I would take that example of me just like being, like a yelling, shouting mom, which is just not something that I would have ever thought. Like, I don't shout at
right.
school. Like, I
Yeah.
can
Like, how did
remember
that happen?
talking to, two of my high school students who, they'd been caught smoking at school and they weren't allowed to do that, of course. And, you know, um, making the phone calls to their families and they're waiting in my office and they're like, God, but Miss Berlin, like you're never mad. Like you don't yell at us. And I was like, well, why would I? Right. Like, I mean, your parents might have a different feeling about what's happened, but like,
Right.
why would I? And so I know that I don't show up right in so many spaces, this person who's like quick to shout and easy to anger, but that's how that was my like how did I get here moment. And
Yeah.
so it somehow it happens. But it also doesn't have to stay that way, right? And I think that's the ability to acknowledge like I'm somewhere I didn't mean to get. I didn't do something bad, I didn't do something wrong. Like we don't have to
You're not a
shame
bad
and guilt
person.
ourselves, right?
Right, right. It's just
um
the way it is.
and if I don't like it, nobody else is going to change it but me either.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, you could stay an angry mom if you wanted to, but you're
Mm-hmm.
choosing that that's not the person that you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got two different questions and I'm not sure which way you want to go. So does that where the like mindful parenting come in? Because you talk about mindful parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have like balance, right, between our
Mm-hmm.
careers and our family. So which way do you want to go? Which would you want to talk about, or is it one and the same?
I mean, I think ultimately they're intertwined.
Right. Yeah, you need balance and mindfulness, right?
Yes. You know, I think for a lot of my clients, they come together because I mean, mindfulness is a practice, right? It's not something you don't become it.
Right.
And it's tricky actually
Yes, it
to
is.
start to slow down, especially if you are a go fast, further, faster, higher
Type
achiever.
A personality. Yeah.
Hmm. Um, there's a practice there, but there's also a commitment to yourself to do that comes in the balance. Because if you're not starting to, I like the word audit for myself, but if you're not starting to sort of audit, your time, your calendar, your schedule, it's just easy to continue to say, I don't have time to be mindful, right?
Right. Right.
And so I think those two things ultimately sort of end up going together, because you have to loosen your grip a little bit um, on some of the things you've maybe held really tightly in order to have that opportunity to engage in those mindful things.
Okay. And you have to let go, maybe, I don't know, tell me if I'm right, of some of that perfectionism that you're going to be, the perfect veterinarian or the perfect
Mm-hmm.
parent or do everything. You have the cleanest
Yeah.
house. That was the thing that I had a hard time with because I like a really clean house. But when my kids were growing up, I just couldn't. I just didn't have time. And I had to really start to let it go. And then I hired a housekeeper like every other week just to kind of make me feel more balanced. So it was clean once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about like what steps you can take to start to figure this all out.
Yeah. Um, I mean, gosh, there's so many ways to go with it. Um, and I guess on the perfectionism note, what I want to say is I've never observed that to serve anyone well long
Well,
term.
because it's impossible, right? You
Right.
can't, nobody can be perfect. And the
Mm-mm.
the goal to try to get there is what causes a lot of our pain.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you also in I want to use the word failure as an opposite of perfectionism, and I want to be intentional about using the word failure, because in failure you have growth. And if your mindset is from a perspective of perfectionism, where everything that's not is a failure, um, you're missing all these opportunities for growth.
Mm. Yeah, I love that thinking.
So I think I don't have a real connection and relationship to perfectionism. I let that go. I let set that down a
Yeah.
long time ago, in a way that I think has served me really, really well. Um,
Yes.
and it doesn't mean that things don't creep in, because I do think, like maybe a cousin to, a cousin to perfectionism is like the control, tight grip on stuff, and having
Yes.
a hard time delegating.
Right. Yeah.
And
Like you
so
want to do it
those,
yourself.
yeah, or like the type A'ers, right? The like, if we're all in a group project, like I'm just going to do it because I know that I'm going to get it done and I'm going to get it turned in on time, and it's all
Right.
going to be in the same font or handwriting, or like
Right.
whatever.
It's going to be done
Um,
well.
that's right. And so I think, you know, I would I don't think it's that controversial, but I would like controversially say, um, I don't also know that that really serves anyone very well long term,
Right.
especially like for your vets who are running businesses. To try to hold everything well means you're doing nothing well. Um, and so I really love building teams, and so I guess as a parent who's working, it's really thinking about, I have two different ideas in my head now. So it's like, how do you build your team and who's on your team? Because I think there might be, like you said, like at one point I realized like I needed a housekeeper on my team. That just made sense for me.
Right.
How is your partner on your team? How are your your office managers, employees on your team, right? And how are you kind of coming back to auditing? How are you thinking in a 360 view about these different aspects of your life?
Yeah, I
That
like that. I
making
like
sense?
that idea of a team. When my son was was in kindergarten or preschool, the preschool was about maybe a mile from my hospital.
Hmm.
And I had a receptionist that was kind of like a grandma age, probably my age now at the time. And if I was going to be late picking him up, like there was a daycare cutoff. Like you had to pick him
Right.
up by, I don't know what time it was, 5:30, 6:30. And I couldn't get out of work. She'd drop everything and she'd go pick him up. And
Hmm.
so it was such a help because I'd be like, oh my gosh, Bobby, I can't get Tristan. I'm going to be late. And she's like, don't worry, I'll go get him right now. And she'd drop everything and she'd drive to daycare. And I would have to call them and say, my receptionist is coming to pick up my son. And then she'd bring him back to work for me. And that was kind of how I coped with that emergency, situation that
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
had a patient that I couldn't leave or whatever.
Yeah.
And I felt like my veterinary hospital was a team in helping me raise those
Hmm.
kids,
Hmm.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And so I think that's, there's lots of different ways I've done these kinds of audits with my clients. Sometimes we sit and we look at like a life wheel where you think about like your financial aspects of your life, your physical health, your fitness and your wellness and your diet, your friendships, your partnered relationship, your volunteerism, your spirituality, different aspects of people's lives that are important to them. And then looked at like where am I right now? Whether it's like a scales analogy or a 0 to 100, how do I feel about these different aspects of my life? And that can help really bring some light to like where might the focus need to be right now. And I've seen it be surprising where people are like feel pretty good about where they're at with things with their partner. They feel okay about their financial place because they've worked hard to be there. And then they come to recognize like I didn't realize that I'm feeling really out of sync, like socially, and I'm missing some connection and some community. And so um, something that I tend to do at the start of working with a client is really like kind of take that zoom out view, because we don't often slow down enough to like really think about ourselves holistically. Um, and another activity so that's one thing I would say that can be really helpful is to stop and just think like, what is it right now that like actually is going really well? What do I feel really good about? And where do I maybe feel out of sync? And for some people, it's like, my eating is just garbage right now. Like I've not made time for that. I'm
Right.
eating out every day. I'm door dashing because it's easy because my schedule is packed with clients. And I can't figure out how else to do that. And this has become easy and my new routine. And like, I actually really don't want to be doing that anymore. So I think, really that sort of like audit about what's going well and what are some of the struggle points and that can help start to right size solutions, right? And when we
Right.
go back to the small steps, building the momentum that you need. And so it might be that, I don't know, going back to the meals example, by figuring out, uh whatever, a meal thing, like a meal prep at home or some kind of a situation where you start to feel better, like you do a Costco trip and you pack healthier snacks or whatever it is, right?
Right.
That
Whatever may
that
kind of
that
aligns with your goals.
yeah, when you throw that first rock in the water, it's the ripples keep coming. And so it's like it might be that it starts with something like a housekeeper or a different meal solution. Um, or one of the strategies I had used in the past when I was just feeling like too stretched in the afternoon with my kids was a 14-year-old who lived down the street would come over for 2 hours a week so I could exercise while my kids were home.
Wow.
Um,
That's
and
lovely.
and it can start to become the ripple when you have a tiny bit of space or a tiny bit of change with something that feels like it's bothering you a lot, whether or not, that was the most problematic thing happening, just starting the change
Yeah.
can help that ripple expand.
Yeah, it kind of helps you think that there's hope
Mm-hmm.
because when you are buried in that stress and overwhelm and all of those feelings, it's really hard to see the way out. And
Hmm.
so what you're proposing is let's get really clear on what it is that we're not liking about our
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
trying to figure that out, and then taking little steps to change certain things so you can start to
Yeah.
see the way, out. And it doesn't mean you're not going to have a busy day. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have
Right.
a day where you're like overwhelmed, but it makes you see that your whole life doesn't have to be that.
Hmm.
It's not like
Hmm.
treading water every day.
Yeah, and hope is so powerful. And it's when everything feels out of control and it feels hopeless, saying
Right.
like, I can do this one thing.
Yes.
And something I really recommend, that I think becomes a really powerful point too is having some accountability around that. So whether it's, you're working with a coach and you're telling your coach what it is that you're working on, or you're telling your office manager, like, I am going to, I am going to walk out the door by 5 p.m., which means I'm shifting. So my last appointment is going to be at whatever, like,
Right.
but telling people so that they know, or I'm going to, texting your best friend, like, hey, I told you I was super stressed. On Wednesdays, I'm having this kid come over and help me babysit. Check in with me in 3 weeks and make sure I'm still doing it. Like, leverage your cheerleaders, your
Right.
people who care about you. Tell them what you're doing so that one, then you're like recognizing yourself for doing something, like, and your consistency with doing it. And you've got somebody who is your supporter who's gonna, be checking up on you. Those things really help.
Oh yeah, they absolutely do. I'm way more accountable to my coach when I tell her I'm going to do something than to myself.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fascinating because it's like, who should you respect more, me or someone else? But then we respect ourselves the least
Mhm.
in a lot of ways. And we're always putting ourselves last because we're
Mhm.
always trying to be the good mom, be the good vet, be the good, in your case, principal. And we forget that the most important person is right here
Mhm.
and they
Well, I
need
think
the most
in these examples too, like, we're all people who've chosen jobs to be of service to
care.
others.
Yes, absolutely.
And so it becomes easy to, right? It becomes a default. I don't even think it's easy. Like, it's what we do. We are in service to other people. These are the
Right.
careers that we've chosen, probably because this is how, like, it's aligned with our values and who we
Sure.
want to be, right? And
Mhm.
what's important to us. And so then, since that's who we are and how we show up, it becomes hardest to do that for ourselves.
Right. Right.
But putting on my behavior nerd hat, like, what what gets measured, right, is where you see progress. And so, you know, some folks, it's not a big percentage of people, but some folks can self monitor and use those habit trackers and like really leverage them. Not a lot of people can like really do that like just for themselves over
Right.
time.
Yeah.
But there are some, so cheers if that's you.
Sure. Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
but a lot of us just do better. Well, and we're like, as a species, we're supposed to rely and depend on other people, right? So
Right.
sharing successes is something that can also bring us together.
Yeah, it's important to have a community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do we need to say more about balancing or have we covered that pretty well? Do you have more recommendations?
Gosh, balancing. I mean,
I don't like the word balance,
I
really.
don't either.
I like
Why
kind
don't
of
you
like
like it? Why don't you like
integration.
it?
Well, I don't
Yeah.
like it because I don't think it's possible. Like I
Mhm.
don't think you can spend the same amount of time at home as you can spend at work. I don't believe that, life is ever really in balance. I think it's
Mhm.
more about like seasons
Mhm.
and integration and trying to, if you want to have it all, it's not in balance. And sometimes you
Right.
do have to cut here and cut there to kind of make pieces fit. And
Mhm.
so we always say work-life balance, which I understand what that's supposed to mean. But I think that balance word implies that everything's like equal, and I don't think it can be that way.
Yeah. I don't either, and I also hate that term.
Do you?
um,
I know. But we all
and
use it because it's such a buzzword, right?
yeah, I mean, it's like a great hashtag, right? Like,
Right.
so for me, why I don't like it is similar. When I picture balance, like, I picture I think it's the Libra graphic, like with the
Oh yeah.
scales,
Yeah, the scales
right?
of
Or
justice.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's when I'm a visual thinker. So when I think about balance, I see the scales, and balance is this singular finite point, right? That even a grain of sand throws off. And that
Yeah,
is just not how life works. So that's
right.
why I don't like it,
Exactly.
is because
Yeah,
it's unsustainable.
sure.
Um, and so like even if you get to that point on any at any given second, it takes nothing at all to like to throw it right out of whack.
One little kid vomiting or kid
Yeah,
with a
one marble.
fever.
We're all a marble away, right? Like a car
Exactly.
marble.
One marble in the car.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think it's like it's recognizing that our priorities are shifting all the time. Like the seasons of our kids shift all the time, and I mean, even circling back to sort of the mom guilt and what my journey has been with that, it was really different when they were younger. From now that my kids are elementary school age now, they need totally different things from me now than they did before, obviously. But
Right.
like until you live it, you're like,
You
oh,
don't
like
know. Yeah.
something has shifted again.
Right.
And so I started. I recognize like my kids need something different from me in this season now than they did when they were younger. And so while an idea that I might have had about being a working mom was that it would get easier as they were older, I actually found it got harder. um,
It does get harder because there's just so many more moving parts.
yeah. And what was important to me. So like I grew up a student athlete. I was a competitive swimmer. This is a huge part of like my origin story that I
Yeah.
didn't touch on. But my kids are doing sports now. And so I want to be present. Like something that's important to me is like I want to be a mom who supports my kids at
Yes.
practice and
You
and
want to
doesn't
be
miss
there
a
for
game.
every
Mm-hmm.
event. Yeah, that's kind of was one of my priorities.
Yeah, and so that's different, right? My older son is, learning to read, but it's not coming super easily to him. And so um while I have the background, right, of special education and knowing all these things about kids, he has a really unique personality and he needs time, he needs space, he needs like a very gentle touch. And he's like prone to like shut down pretty quickly. And so I really have to show up in a different way with him and to support him and encourage him to like keep reading, right? Because it's practice is the only way this gets better.
Right, right. But when reading's hard for you, it's hard to put that
Oh.
time in because it's frustrating, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he needs somebody to show up with like all the patience in the world, which is not always my strong suit. Um, and so I think again, like as this season has shifted, what balance has meant is like what worked, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago needs a recalibration. And so I think it's really important in thinking about balance that it's more about thinking about like it's a constant revision of like of the systems that you have in place, like which systems are working really well for us as a family. As my kids have gotten older, it's like what can they start taking responsibility for that I
Oh,
don't need to do
yeah.
anymore.
I know.
um,
I love that.
right?
I love when they get
Yeah.
old enough to do housework because
Yes.
I would
Right.
leave them a list every Saturday. I was like, okay, mom's going to work, but you guys got to get your chores done before I get home. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think if you're sort of not, and whatever, different families have different systems that work for them, or that they have family meetings, or that they do like audits or things, but it feels like about every 6 months, if not a little sooner, you're in a new season, or something needs tweaking and adjusting, and so I think there's an opportunity to pay attention to that and schedule that, whatever, put it on. I'm like, again, I said, I'm really a visual person. So it's
I
like, I'm
like
going to
that
put that
though.
on my calendar.
So you're recommending that if you're in that situation where you're working and raising kids and they're
Mhm.
growing up and there's all these changes, that you sit down every 3 to 6 months and be like,
Yeah.
okay, how is it
What's
going?
working?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's working, what's not working, what can I adjust? How can I
Yeah.
do this differently? I'm frustrated on, whatever day of the week. How can I make that
Right.
different? Can I change my
Yes.
schedule? Can I
Hmm.
change the way I think? Because I think
Hmm.
that's a big thing that we don't think about
Huge.
is can I think about this differently?
Hmm.
Rather than being frustrated that my son's struggling to read, can I think of it as an opportunity to practice my own patience or whatever,
Mhm. Right.
just,
Or even
so,
like, and with just to take the reading example, one of the things that I needed some help, I didn't have enough information, right? So it's like, I know he needs to practice reading,
yeah,
um, because he can do it, he just doesn't want to do it, and it isn't
yeah,
easy. So he's like,
right.
he needs practice with
The struggle.
resilience as a
Yeah,
kid.
right,
And so, like, I know we need time for that, but we have finite time as a family. And I'm sure that this is like holds true
yeah,
for everyone on this call, because we get home from work between 5 and 6, and they go to bed around 8. We have
yeah,
to eat dinner in there, and some days there's practices, and
right.
so I don't have an abundance of time to figure out. He has math homework, he has the reading that
Just
he
squeeze
needs to
it in.
practice.
Yeah,
This week is the science fair, right?
right,
So I actually didn't have quite enough information to be able to figure out, like, I don't know how to prioritize this time. And so
right.
for us, that was reaching out to the teacher and saying, like, here's what you sent home, here's what we're noticing. Can you help give us some suggestions? Like, what is, from your perspective, you're with him all day.
Right.
What do you think is the most important thing, that we should do if we told you we had 20 minutes every day where he gets one-on-one parent time, what's the thing we should be prioritizing?
Right. I love it.
Um, because otherwise we were guessing, and right,
Sure. Yeah.
or making different decisions. I might decide something, his dad might decide something out, like, right, because
Right. Well, and
it's whack-a-mole.
that's the teacher's job, right? To
Yes.
try to help you raise your kid. I mean,
And so what I
really.
would say is, even when you're an expert, right? I am an
Sure.
expert
Yeah.
and well credentialed in education. I'm not my son's teacher.
Sure.
And so it was recognizing, I need to ask. And so I think that prioritization, when you look at, like, I have X number of units of time, how am I choosing to use them? Is this the highest leverage, most important? And then with, like, my coaching clients too, like, is this the most values aligned thing? Like, a lot of us type A'ers are really good at getting our tasks done or
Sure.
doing our to-do list, but, like,
Right.
did everything need to be on there?
Right. Yeah. Can we let some things go to
Yeah.
prioritize the things that we really want to do? Yeah.
Right.
So
Because if we
practice.
don't, they slip away.
Sure. Yeah. And then you get frustrated because it's on your to-do list every day and you're not getting it
Yeah.
done, right? So practically speaking, you're saying, okay, audit yourself. What would
Mhm.
you say? Like, do you have steps that people should do to try to manage their time with their families and their work?
Yeah, well, something
Sort of.
that I like to do is really, like, and again, I'm a real visual person. I think a lot of us are, and or visual, something that can, like, bring things to additional clarity.
Right.
And so, like, I'm a Google Calendar user, but whatever your system is, I really like to look, like, I do it every Monday, but is just to look at the week on paper.
Yes.
And on a weekly basis, like, I'll have my work calendar. My husband, he's also an educator, he's an assistant principal, so he works a lot of nights. So there's some, like, anytime the high school kids have a football game or whatever else, he's
He's
there.
gone. Yeah.
So yep. And so, right, we have some, like, calendar management, who's picking up who, and it helps me to feel like in control of my week and knowing, like, what the plan is, where do I need support. um, and then I also start to think about it from a patterns perspective. So, first of all, it's just like looking a week at a time or a month at a time. What are the things that, have a time specific, these things are happening this month, right? Like,
Right. They have to happen.
these are the have to happens this month,
Yeah.
and starting with those and really getting a sense to the orientation of time, right? Seeing it is helpful. And then I think there's a reflection activity that can be really helpful, which is like, must all this happen in this
That's a
in this
great
time frame?
question to ask yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It really is because, well, first of all, writing it all down makes it more real because in your head it's
Mm-hmm.
bigger than it is on paper. Like I'll
Yeah.
do that. I'm like, oh, I have a really busy week. And then I'll write it all down and be like, oh, look, I got a lot of free hours here that I didn't, like my brain's thinking aren't there. Yeah.
And I do the opposite. I will, in my head, be like, I can get that all. Yeah, we can do all those things.
You're
And
overly
then I write it
optimistic.
down, and I'm like, ooh,
What
like,
the heck?
on what planet? Like,
Yeah.
Like not in a 60-minute hour, not in a 24-hour day, like
No,
not
no.
possible.
I did that more when
So
my kids were young. I volunteered
yeah.
for everything. I signed up for everything.
Mhm.
And then when the week would come up, I'd be like, holy crap, how am I going to get all this done? Yeah.
Yeah. So must this all happen now?
Right. Yes.
And if it must, like what opportunities do I have? Like if this feels like, if you look at it and it's like, how does this feel like energetically as I'm looking at this? And I'm actually not like a super woo-woo person, but I do think like you can feel when you
Sure.
look at your
When you're
calendar, like,
pushing too hard.
does this feel like you look at it like, oh yeah, okay,
Doable.
April looks good.
Yeah.
April looks good.
Right.
I think an example, our March, April, like kind of the 15th of the month to the 15th of the month, has been really, really full. Like Little League baseball season started, if
Yes.
that's
In
true
the
for you guys
spring, the
too.
kids get busy, right?
So we've got, yeah, 3 baseball games a week
Yeah.
between my two kids plus a practice,
And
the
practice.
science
Yeah.
fair. I've had 3 travel events for work where I've been gone overnight. And spring break is coming up for my kids from school.
Yeah.
And so and so when I have known like this 4 weeks is going to feel like a lot. There's a lot that's going on. There's a lot of moving pieces. And so knowing that, then there are a lot of must do's and everything else is going to be a no.
Right. I
so
love that. So
so that
then you
that
have to set a boundary for
because
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, so and I think that in thinking about the like elusive balance piece, or like how do I think about living in a way that feels aligned, manageable and sustainable in a month where there is a lot going on, we're going to need to decline some other things. That might mean that we, I'm trying to think of like a specific example. Well, and even in my work calendar, to be honest, like, as people are requesting, like, can we have a meeting about X, Y, and Z? If it doesn't need to happen immediately, I'm waiting until I actually have space on my calendar.
Yeah. Let's
So
put it off till May or whatever. Just
yeah,
punch
yeah.
it.
So that I have the time and space to deal with the actual crises that come up, because I know that's real for you veterinarians as well. Like you're gonna have crises and emergencies. That is a
Yes.
part of the care you provide.
Right.
And so if it's already busy, putting off the non-urgent emergency care types of things, whether that's in your professional or your personal life, so that you have space for the emergencies to actually happen.
Right. Right. Yeah. When I was learning from a coach about time management, it was like make the plan and then make the plan for if it didn't happen during the plan time. Like if it's something that really
Yeah.
has to be done and something blows up and you didn't get it done, you have to have like a contingency plan. Okay, if I
Yeah.
don't get this done today, it's going to happen Thursday or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. Yeah.
And I think some of it too, I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but in that, like, what's an emergency and non-emergency, and when you're providing emergency care, I think getting really clear, or being really clear on what are the things that do require an emergency response, what
Right.
requires an urgent response, and then what requires a response, but in a regular amount of time. I think it can be really disorienting when, I don't know if disorienting is the right word, but it can be what I've seen for myself working in education, right? Where we have students that can be in a crisis. We like,
Sure.
need to call 911, like things happen.
Right. Right.
Um, and 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 then there's also an expectation, right, that people are available all the time.
There's
And
perceived
and
emergencies by your clients,
and
which are your parents. Yeah.
yes, and when we respond to perceived emergencies as if they're emergencies, we start to change how we think about them. Like we start to believe ourselves, right? Like
Right. Right.
by behaving that way over time.
Right.
And so do our clients. And
Yeah.
so I think that's something, that's a habit I've really, really, really worked on, is having the tendency to schedule whoever in a meeting or whatever, the first 15-minute time block I see on my calendar versus looking until I actually have a reasonable amount of time available, even if that's 5 days in the future. And so that's something I've worked really hard on because I think also like I'm a pleaser, right? We're in
Yes.
service jobs.
Right.
And so, and, and what I've come to recognize is it's actually like a fallacy of being a people pleaser by scheduling that person for 15 minutes tomorrow. It's not really enough time. They're not going to get the best of me because I'm coming right from something and I'm going right to something. And so they're going to get a frazzled, fractured version of me who
Right.
doesn't really have enough time to address the issue,
And
to
doesn't
really
really want
have a
to because they're
doesn't
rushed.
want to like, and if I have to pee, forget about it. It's
Right.
like
Exactly.
now I
Yeah.
can't even focus.
Right.
Um, and and the best thing that I can actually do for myself and in service to this person, who it matters to me that I'm in service to them,
Sure.
is to actually schedule that when I'm available and not at the
When
first
you're
15-minute
distracted.
increment on my
Right.
calendar.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have to deal with the fallout if they're unhappy, which
Right.
I really want to talk to you probably on another podcast more about that whole conflict thing because you're
Mm,
an expert in that because you deal with
mhm,
parents and their kids. And I know
mhm.
how emotional that relationship can be, being
Yeah.
a mom and going to the school and being like upset about what was going on with my kid at school and being upset with the parent or the principal or whatever. I've been through that. So I think that's very much aligned with what we do with clients.
Yeah.
So maybe what we'll do is, since we did such a good job covering all this, is we'll come back and do that again if you're willing to come back
Yeah, that would
another
be
time and
that would
talk
be
about
great.
conflict resolution, because that's something that you do and
I
you
do.
have expertise at that.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think there's two, probably more than two, but like two things that really come together, right? Because you have the communication, conflict, sort of management skills, but you also have sort of the neurobiology, neuroscience of understanding what is happening when a person is dysregulated
right.
and how are you, the most skillful, the person with the deepest bench of communication tools has to use them at the right time, right? And depending on where that, you know, dysregulated, upset person is, there's a lot of different ways you can go. So yeah, I'd love to
Yeah.
talk about that.
Okay, because I don't want to just touch on that. I really want to
Hmm.
delve into it. And I think if we go into that, we're going to be here another hour, and I don't want to keep you for 2 hours. But so what have I not asked you about this work life integration or whatever we want to call it? What have I not asked that we need to still cover on this subject? Anything?
I don't know. I guess what I want to offer, I'm trying to think what the question would be, um, is just maybe to, when when all the vets who are on this call are thinking about their life audit and, how they're trying to make those adjustments, or come up with, a
Plan.
quarterly or a semi-annual, like just like life check-in,
Right.
is to not forget about fun and joy. Because when I think about back about some of my hardest moments with my kids, and when I was really trying to like, when I knew it wasn't working, what I didn't realize was that I was missing out like on so much joy and on so much fun.
Right.
And so I think, where are you having fun? Like if you know if like me, you're in a phase where you've got school age kids, like this window is finite, right?
Yeah, you
And
don't believe it
so
when you're in it, but when you're
yeah,
someone like me that has grown children, it goes by like that. And I tell people that all the time. And people used to tell me that. But when
yeah,
you're in it and it's like that big load on you, you don't realize that you
hmm,
have to really try to enjoy it because you will miss it
yeah.
when they move out.
And and when your nervous system is not right,
It's
what
hard
I
to
would
be
probably say
joyful.
is like, it was hard to be joyful. And I'm not
Mhm.
even sure if I could have been if I
Yeah.
tried.
Yeah.
And so, um, where are you having fun? Like, what are you doing that you enjoy? And so really including that as a part of your, what are the things that I do with my family that I love and that I'm enjoying? And if that's a question you're having a hard time answering, you're not alone and don't feel bad about it.
Sure.
uh,
Right.
to
Yeah.
say that up front.
Yeah.
And um, there's things you can do, right? Because it like we all like to laugh and be joyful and be playful, and so that might be a point to think about, like, are you just trying to hold too much right now, or maybe that's an evidence point that you might be holding too much right now, and ask
Yeah.
for help. It's out there.
Yes. Yeah. That is always my biggest message is ask for help.
Yeah.
Because when we get in the weeds, we feel like we're unable to be helped or we're
Hmm.
embarrassed to admit
Hmm.
that we need help. And I think
Yeah.
that it's such an important thing to remember.
Yeah. And it feels lonely when you're in it,
Yes.
and you're not alone. Like, it's such a common and shared experience, and it feels so lonely. And so that's something I think to say too is, I have been there and felt like, no one else can understand this place I'm in. And certainly no one else could understand and be in my body and know my exact set of circumstances.
Sure.
And feeling that alone is a very shared experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't realize that even though it feels very lonely, there's so many other people that are in the same boat.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. So, is there anything else we need to say? Or what I want you to do is tell people where to find you in
Okay.
coaching. So, if you're having big, big issues with your parenting, um, you're the right person. Lauren's the one.
Yeah. Yes. And because it's about two things, right? It's about your relationship with parenting and discipline and all, like, so like how you feel about that and how you
Yes.
experience it,
Right.
and the actual what you're doing. So it's how
Doing of it.
you're doing it and what you're doing.
Right.
And then making all those pieces fit together. Yeah. So my website is laurenberlincoaching.com. Um, and so that's the best place to find me. I also have a profile on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Lauren Berlin, and I should pop up there.
And I promise, as long as Lauren's willing, that we're going to come back and we're going to talk about conflict
Yeah.
and
Be
how to
great. I would
handle it,
love it.
right? Because you love that.
I do love conflict. Yes.
Yeah, I know. We talked a little bit before the podcast, and she was saying how much she loves that and how tightly her experience relates to ours because she deals with parents and children, and we deal with parents and children basically with the pets.
Hmm.
Because a lot of
Yeah.
those pets are children to people. So
Yes.
I think that'll be a
Yeah.
really good discussion. So I promise that I will get her back on here in a month or two or whenever she has time, and we'll talk again.
All right. Thank
Yeah.
you, Julie.
Thank you so much, Lauren. So this is Lauren Berlin. Look her up. She's awesome. And have a beautiful week, everyone. Take care of yourself. Bye. Bye,
Bye.
Lauren. Okay. I didn't want to keep you going much longer because we've been an
That's all
hour.
right. How'd we
Goes by
do?
so fast for me.
It
Like
does.
I'm always like, how can it be an hour already? Like I would just talk for 3 or 4 hours, but
Hmm.
I try not to
Yeah.
do more than an hour. But
Yeah.
so are you open to doing that?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. All right. Well,
Anytime. I love conflict. I mean, I don't love being in it, but
I always say that. I always say that I love conflict.
yeah,
And
I
people look
do.
at me.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
was on the board of the Michigan Veterinary Medical Association and I was in the leadership track and I was the president. And I loved nothing more than if the board got in an argument. Like I loved it. But the reason I love it is because I like trying to resolve it. To
Hmm.
me, it's a challenge. It's
Hmm.
like these feelings get all tense. And then what can I do to help them work it out? And
Hmm.
get to a resolution. Like that's why I love it. And when I coach people, they're like, "Oh, I hate conflict. I hate conflict." I'm like, "Well, you can learn to love it if you
Hmm.
get some skills under your belt and you learn not to fear
Yeah.
it."
Yeah. And
Um,
it doesn't ever mean that it, like, when you have to have like a tough conversation with someone, it doesn't ever
yeah.
mean you're excited. Like, I don't necessarily
Oh
feel
no,
excited about having
no.
like
No, but
and
I used
the,
to always be like, oh, a client's angry. Okay,
yeah,
I'm good at this.
yeah,
I'm going to stay calm and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to
yeah,
handle it.
yep,
And then
I got
I
this.
would really, you feel that like adrenaline when
Mhm.
people are getting angry and yelling at you, you
Oh
start to
yeah.
get defensive. And then the skill is just being like, okay, they're grieving, they're upset, stay
Hmm.
calm, figure out what their problem is. Like that's what I like about it is like that mental
Yeah.
discipline. So, okay,
And it
well,
really
let's
is
do that.
a creative activity, right? It's like, yeah, that's
Yeah,
why I like it too.
how can I navigate this with this person? And it isn't always successful. Like once in a while you fail and somebody's just pissed at you and they
Hmm.
never want to come back, but it doesn't happen that often.
And that's okay. They can find another vet.
Exactly. That's exactly what I say. Oh, you're apparently not happy with me, so here's your
Yeah.
records.
Yeah.
Go
All right.
somewhere else, and then I don't
Yeah.
have to ever deal with you again. So, okay, well, let's do that then. Um,
Yeah.
do you
Do
want me
you
to
want to
just
schedule it?
email you, or do you want to schedule it now?
We can
I'm
schedule it
okay to
now if you
schedule
want
it now if you're open.
to. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So, end of April, I have a few openings. I'm going to be gone the 1st of May, but I'll be back the last couple of weeks of May.
Okay.
So whatever's
Sorry, I
good
have
for
to get
you,
out.
because you're the one with
I,
little kids. I have more time than you now, because I
yes.
don't have little kids. I just have a son that's getting married this summer, so I got to
Oh,
worry about
that's
that.
exciting.
Oh yeah, I'm
Congratulations.
super excited about that.
Sorry, I do keep my work and personal life on separate devices because that was an important boundary for me.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah,
And so I do, but it is obnoxious when I have to schedule because I have to get out two computers.
yeah. No, that's okay. I'm
Um,
I'm not in a hurry. You were my last thing to do today, so
cool.
as soon as I'm out of here, I just got to go walk my dogs. I don't have kids to take care of anymore, just dogs.
I have a science fair to go to today.
Oh, fun.
Yes.
Did you do the
Okay.
project or did the kid do it?
No, he did it, but it was an optional thing. And I mean, he's like, he loves everything. He says yes to
Oh,
everything. He wants to do everything. He
he's a
loves
doer.
everything.
Yeah,
Yes. And so, but that was like one of our big conversations was I'm not going to beg you to do your science project.
right,
You signed up for it. You
yeah,
don't have to do it.
right.
And so you can choose if you want to do it or if you don't want to do it. But if you say you want to do it, then when I say it's
Gotta
time to
go.
work on the science project, like that's it. Like otherwise we could just like because I'm not gonna fight with you to do something that you don't have to
Yeah.
do.
Did he do it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on
And
his own?
he
Good.
had a lot of fun, but it was like because he was like, and I was like, oh no, it's not gonna be that.
No, but you know what? That's a great lesson because that's what life is like.
Yeah.
Like my son will say, "Oh, I really don't want to do such and such for his job, and I really don't want this." I'm like, "I know, but some stuff you have to do for your job that you don't want to do. Like
Hmm.
if you love most of your job and once in a while you have to do something crappy, that's how it
Right.
is. Like
Yeah.
that's
And
part of work."
that's a pretty good if it's 80/20, you're in a pretty good place.
Exactly. That's what I
Yeah.
tell him. I'm like, yeah, sometimes you have to take the yucky stuff in order to be able to do the fun stuff because the yucky stuff pays better.
Yes. So end of April,
Well, you said April and May are your busy time. Do you want to bump it till the summer?
end of May, I think looks fine. It's
Okay.
this next 4 week stretch.
Okay, you just pick a day and I'll tell you because most of my days are wide open right now. And
You're 3 hours ahead. So do you want to do like a 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock again? So that's my time. So then it's like,
3 or 4 my time. Yeah,
yeah.
perfect.
Um,
Yeah.
May 21st is a Wednesday.
Okay. At 3 or 4 my time. Which one do you want?
You
Which would
pick.
you rather, noon or one?
I'm wide open.
All right, let's do 3 my
Okay.
time, which is noon your time, right? Because you're in
Yep.
California.
Yep.
Okay, that's where my son lives. So I'm going to
What
be out
city is
there a
he in?
lot this summer. He's in LA.
Okay.
All right. So noon your time, 3 my time, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the 21st.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, that should be easy because we both love conflict, so it'll be easy for us to talk about.
Yeah.
I'll try
It'll
to
be
come
fun.
up with some scenarios maybe to throw at you, and maybe you'll have some too from your I can tell you the
Great.
stuff I had conflict when my kids were in school because I had a few with the principal and
Yeah.
the band teacher. I was friends with the
Oh
band
yeah.
teacher because I worked with both my kids were band kids and I was really close with the band director, but we had a few
Hmm.
knockdowns about my kids.
Well, and I mean, and I was a student athlete growing up too. So I
Yes,
had,
so was
like
I.
the whole
Mhm.
interface of coaches and
Mm.
kids and like, and for us for school districts, I mean, it's wild because like the sometimes the head coaches are teachers, but typically like they're whether it's your stage manager, choreographer for theater, or your assistant coaches or your freshman or JV level coaches, they are walk-on coaches that are paid like $2,000 for the season. Like they
Right.
are not paid
They
well.
don't
They're
care.
they're barely your employees. They're like on
Right.
your campus for this like
Yeah.
finite amount of time. And
They'll have
we
to
end up
regulate them.
in oftentimes a lot of conflict with those kinds of positions. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, it's just like not worth it. Like the, well,
Yeah, it doesn't
and
feel
I
worth
don't mean not worth it for like to the kid and to the family,
right,
but it's
right.
like, oh my God, this is like such a frustration. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and the,
I
and the
ran
bench
band
isn't
camp
deep.
and the
Yeah. There's
parents would
not,
get all irate about something really stupid like my kid's not in the right cabin or my
yeah.
kid this or that. And I just be like,
Hmm.
oh Lord, I have to deal with these parents that are all
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah. I mean, and I think like, yeah, I'm excited about the episode because I think there's advice on both sides, right? There's like, as a parent, if you want to be heard,
Yes.
here's like some ways that I would recommend you
Don't run
handle
in there
things. And
yelling.
yeah, and also like literally every kid lies. Like they just do.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean your kid is a liar. It just
Right.
also like you you are hearing at best 50% of the story.
Right. Right. Yeah. And
So
you
be
trust your
open. You
kid,
have to be
but you
open.
can't always, yeah, to the other
Well,
side of the
well,
story.
and I think you can trust your kid, but you have to in the context of you only have the most of this story you have is 50% because
Right.
you're hearing only one perspective.
Right.
And that is if there's only two people in a conflict that your
Yeah.
kid is talking to you about. And
Well,
sometimes there's more.
and the kids, I know when my daughter was in elementary school, she had a big issue because she had her feelings hurt by a program that the school was doing, and she was
Mhm.
crushed. Like she was
Yeah.
crushed. And it crushed me because I'm like, you guys
Yeah.
screwed up my kid. I had a really confident kid, and now she's a mess. And so I
Hmm.
was mad about that.
Right.
But it was the kid's emotion. The parents didn't know, or I mean, the
Right.
teachers didn't know. The principal didn't know what they had done to my kid. But
Right.
I knew because she was coming home crying every day. And I was like, you guys really screwed my kid up. So I had to go in there and make it known what was happening with my kid because I needed help. I'm like, I don't know how to handle this. She's
Yeah.
a mess. And she's just crushed over this silly little thing. But it's really hard as a parent not to be emotional about that.
Hmm.
Because it's like I
Hmm.
had this super confident, like really smart little girl, and now she feels like trash, and she's only
Yeah.
in third grade or fourth grade
Yeah.
or whatever it was. I'm like,
Hmm.
so yeah, there's a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
and they, and you can't, I think to your point, you can't know what you don't know. And they
right.
probably were thrilled when you told them because they didn't know
Oh,
that
the
wasn't the
principal
outcome
was
they had
so,
wanted.
I still remember how good the principal was to me. He
Yeah.
was like, look, we didn't realize this was happening for her. I'm going to make it right. I'm going to help her,
Yeah.
figure it out. Here's her test score. She didn't see it. Like she missed this like gifted kid thing by like 1 point. And
Hmm.
so all the other kids were gifted and she was the stupid one, like in her mind.
Yes.
And all the gifted kids got to do special projects. And so every time they came into the room and called the gifted kids out, my daughter was like
Yeah.
upset. So anyway, it was a silly thing, but not to her. It like meant the
Right.
world.
Yeah.
But
Well, and we,
then she became the valedictorian when she was in high school because she was like, nobody's ever going to call me stupid again. So
yeah,
in her overall life picture, I think it served her, but at the time it was horrible.
crushing. Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah. You made me remember I was, in the scope of my day to day, like stuff you have to do as an assistant principal, there was a very large like discipline investigation happening about a social media thing that many students
Oh,
were
I'm
involved
so
in.
glad we didn't have
And
when my kids were little.
yeah. And so as a part of this like because it's also like user, like screen names. So you don't, so as a part
I
of
know
it,
who's who.
a number, like I was meeting with a number of kids to just say, like, hey, because anytime you talk to kids, like, is there anything else I need to know? Are there any other students that you think I need to talk about?
Right.
So in this, if you give a mouse a cookie, like,
Right.
I,
It grows.
interviewed this one student, and we don't call parents, like schools don't have to call parents when we're interviewing kids. And they weren't
Right.
even in trouble. It was like we were
Right. We're
trying
just
to
trying to
figure out
gather
what
information.
the actual heck was happening here
Right.
and
Yeah.
who was actually involved. So
Right.
I interviewed a student and was like, is it your, like someone thought, like, here's what I'm looking at, here's what we're trying to figure out. I've asked all the students if there's anyone else they thought like I should talk to. Your name is one of the like dozens of names of kids I'm talking to today. What can you tell me about this? And the next morning I had like two voicemails, an email, like just from that student's parents who were like,
Yeah.
he was distraught. He was so upset. Like, how dare you? And you didn't
Right.
talk to, and I was like, I'm like, who, which kid? Like I know
Right.
like
I didn't
30
even
kids
remember.
yesterday.
Right.
And he didn't say anything. Like I had no way to know
Sure.
that
Yeah.
he had told himself a story about like, I'm going to be in trouble. This is going to
Yes.
go on my records.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get to go to like all of these
Right. That's
stories
what
that he
they
had told
do.
himself.
Yeah. Especially
Mm-hmm.
the smart kids, man. They go right off the rails.
Yes. And again, like I had probably talked to 30 kids that day and
Right.
no one else took it that way. And I
Right.
couldn't have known he did, but I was again
Right.
like very happy. I mean, his dad came in hot. I understand why he did. I wasn't
Sure.
thrilled dad came in on fire, but
Right.
also I was glad and I was like, that is like, I am so sorry. Thank you for letting me know. Like, that is
Right.
totally not what this was. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
with your permission, can I please call your son back
Right.
in and like
Yeah.
totally clarify this with him?
Yeah.
And so, but I couldn't have known if they didn't tell me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It is crazy. But okay. So I've got you down and
All
we'll do this
right.
again. It's been so fun talking to you.
Yes.
I'm
Thanks,
really
Julie.
glad
Have a
we
good
met.
one. Me too. Thank you.
All right. I'll
Bye.
let you know when this episode comes out. It's probably going to be at least 4 weeks. But
Okay.
I'll send you an email. I'll try to remember to do that. And then I'll see you in May.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.